Welcome to Nameless Debate Radio, where radioactivity is contagious. You can join us in broadening our minds on the Nameless Debates Discord via the link below and even feature here yourself, if you've got what it takes.
Did you want to I don't know, did you want to outline what we're going to be talking about, or?
I guess so. I guess the primary topic is when incorporating different things into your worldview. Specifically, this is a discussion between InSync and I, but I guess it also could relate to the people listening. Is it worth considering including Antilogic, which is essentially a system of logic which negates the three laws of thought? And currently, my position is that yes, it absolutely is very useful to include, and it makes a lot of sense and clears up some confusions and removes the necessity for some assumptions. And InSync believes that it is unnecessary.
Yep. That's a fair statement of my position. It's not that I can't make sense of what you're saying, or that I don't think it's useful in some sense. It's that I don't find it necessary for explaining the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess, do you want to briefly explain what Antilogic is for everyone? Because obviously there are going to be some people who've never heard of it.
Yes, okay. So I guess I should probably start by brief touch on what the laws of thought or laws of logic are traditionally. So there's normally three laws that people use for basically in whenever they're working with logic. The first one is a law of identity that essentially states that A equals A, or something is equal to itself. And I think it should be pretty self-explanatory what that really means. Just like A is A. The second law is that A does not equal not A, which is essentially that the identity and the negation of identity are distinct and they are not equal. And the third law, and this is the one that is most different in Antilogic, or changes the behavior most in Antilogic, is called the law of excluded middle. And what this says is that, for example, like a Boolean value, which typically that's used in the propositional logic, is working with Boolean stuff, is that A can either be true or false, but it cannot be both. And so essentially, what Antilogic is doing is, the way I initially came up with it was I thought, okay, I think that logic applies to everything, right? And so I thought, okay, well, perhaps if logic applies to everything, then logic should also apply to itself. And so like A equals A, yep, logic is logic, makes sense. But then I got to A does not equal not A. And in order for this statement to hold, that requires me to have a not A, or not logic. And so the way that I started working with this when trying to understand what that could mean is I took the existing three laws of logic and I inverted them. And so what that means is that in Antilogic, the law of identity becomes A does not equal A. So in other words, the way that this behaves in practice is that if you reference A or measure A or interact with A in any way, that the act of you interacting with it causes it to change. We have encountered similar things in other areas, but I'll probably touch on that a little bit later. The second law means that A does not equal A, which is essentially like with logic, it's the contrapositive of the first law. It's kind of like a way of restating the first law that enables you to use contrapositives and removes any ambiguity. But in this case, it sort of reinforces the idea that the identity of the object is not static, right? The identity is static, but the value it holds can change over time depending on how it's referenced. And the third one, that when that is inverted, that becomes a little bit mind-bending, which is that A can be true and false, at the same time. It is not necessarily true and false at the same time. So in Antilogic, you still have tautologies and contradictions, but in the event that some kind of logical structure or proposition is not tautological or a contradiction, then it's in a sort of superposition where it can be both true and false at the same time.
So is an example that you would give of something like this a paradox?
Yes. So that was another thing that sort of led me to start investigating this topic, was that when evaluating, trying to evaluate paradoxical structures using logic, I just couldn't, it created this weird loop sort of cycle effects, or it does some weird stuff that is not logical, right? Like paradoxes pretty much definitionally are not logical. And so I was sort of trying to understand how is it that, like, my current belief. So for clarification, another thing being discussed here besides Antilogic would be DMTheory, which is Datalogical Metaphysical Theory. Essentially a theory of everything, which describes the nature of existence, and says that, like, all things which exist must have some kind of structure. This structure exists relative to the rest of the structure, and the parts that make it up are data, which are like the little discrete bits of the structure, and then the logic, which holds it all together, kind of like the glue. And I was trying to understand if I believe that everything that exists has this kind of structure and therefore is all logical, then how is it that I can interact with or sort of like conjure up in my head these structures which are not logical? Like that, I couldn't understand that. And so that's sort of, I guess, an introduction into something.
Sure. Just give me one sec. Okay, so the last thing you said was that if you hold to the belief that everything in existence is logical, right?
Yep.
Then the question that occurs in your mind is, how can you conceptualize illogical structures, which I'm assuming indicates in your mind, right, that there is some kind of that there's some part to reality that you're referencing when you're talking about things that aren't logical, so paradoxes.
Right. So the logical conclusion of that is that whether or not these structures exist or not, some part of existence, which like led to me, has then indirectly led to the like creation of these structures, at least in my mind. And so they might not exist, but if it is true that it is all a result of logic, then logic has led to these kind of structures at least coming into existence within my mind.
Sure.
And I could not understand how such a thing could occur.
Yeah, and so like I understand what you're saying, right? That it seems like a contradiction that something that defies the rules of logic could be conceptualized within a system that's entirely constrained by logic. But
yes,
like to me, the thing that occurs to me is, what if like the rules of logic in the context of neurology enable you to produce conjecture which defies the laws of logic insofar as you don't notice that it does?
What do you mean you don't notice that it does?
So, like, you create some kind of like logical conundrum where the location of the contradiction is hidden. You don't know exactly where the contradiction is, so it looks like you're saying something that makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense. That's a paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like the thing that I'm like struggling with is, why can't paradoxes just be a product of the mind?
Well, no, but then they are still a product of logic.
Yeah, but not of antilogic, right?
No, but that means that they are logical, right? If logic has led to the existence of those things, then definitionally I would say that would make them logical.
Logical in the sense that they are contained within the purview of what's possible in logic. Not logical as in coherently adhering to the rigor of logic, right? Like dreams are logical in the sense that it's logical that dreams can happen in brains, right? But you wouldn't claim that dreams are logical in the sense that dreams are
Right.
like sequential.
Exactly, and similar to dreams, I do not at any point claim that antilogic exists. In fact, I say the opposite. I say, by definition, antilogic must not exist.
So I'm not understanding then. Is it just a conceptual tool?
No, I think that it is the relationship that exists as a part of logic, right? So you might consider like the grand total set of logic. I don't think that's a good way of seeing it, because it's like they're kind of two halves of the same thing, right? Which is the structure of logic, in the sense that logic is like the relational structure of structure. I think that the combination of logic and anti-logic is the structure of logic. And so if you only have the three laws of logic and don't have the three laws of anti-logic, I think that there are some things that just cannot be explained.
Okay, so let's say that I grant this, right? I think the thing I'm wondering is what that I will need to explain will remain unexplained, right?
Okay, so
Yeah.
how one main one is besides paradoxes is things like how can things appear to change? Like how is it that like we can assign the identity to something, and the value of that identity appears to change over time? Like how does time even come into being when the nature of logic is A equals A, and so that is the value is always static. It is always going to be A, unchanging. How can that lead to something such as time?
Sounds like what you're saying is like I could use this as a tool to understand like how certain apparent contradictions that I could like resolve rationally, right? But like to explain to myself why they appear. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think it is a useful tool to understand how things such as time could be the case. Like, I think that without some other kind of mechanisms besides the traditional three laws of logic, change is inexplicable.
Yeah, but I don't believe in change on a universal level. Like from my perspective on the like, let's say like the totality, the omniverse as Eddie would call it, right? Is that it's eternal. It doesn't change. It's only
but you also don't believe in falsehood, which violates the laws of logic, because then you like.
When you say I don't believe in falsehood, as in I don't believe falsehood is part of ontology. That's true.
I think that falsehood is not is a part. I think that falsehood is a part of ontology, but it is not a part of existence. Everything which exists is true, because that is a part of the definition, and all falsehood does not exist. That is what I believe.
Study of existence, so falsehood can't be part of ontology.
No, but I think that that ontology only looking at existence is like a limited view. Like, by definition, if non-existent is
ontology.
No, but if antilogic is if non-existence is the antithesis of existence, then by examining existence, you are at the very least indirectly examining non-existence. And that's where the non-existence thing comes into play as well, right? Like, I think that the laws of logic apply to all things, not just things within existence. I think that the laws of logic apply to the laws of logic themselves and also to existence, which means that existence equals existence, and via law 2, existence does not equal non-existence.
So, like, I don't understand what you mean when you say I don't just believe that the laws of logic apply to everything in existence, because I don't think there is anything else. Like, apart from...
There's nothing else that exists, but there are non-things which don't exist.
No, but that's what I mean, is that non-things that don't exist aren't. There is no thing... That's...
Yeah, they don't exist. I agree.
No, but
to completely disregard them, I think, is to miss part of the picture.
But they're not even anything. That's what it means not to exist. That's literally what it means. There's as
Yes, they are not things. They are non-things, and thus they don't exist.
not disregarding anything because there isn't anything to disregard.
Yes, but you are disregarding structure.
I'm disregarding hypothetical structure, which seems to me to not be coherent, right?
It is not consistent with existence or with truth,
Yes, which
because
is what
it
I
is
said.
non-existent and falsehood.
I mean, I think I make a much weaker claim, but it's basically the same when I say it seems to me to be incoherent, right?
From within the three laws of logic, yes.
Okay.
But I think that the laws of logic themselves necessitate it being a part of the picture, even if it's a part of the picture that does not exist because it's a falsehood.
I think not existing means not being part of the picture. I think by definition that if you don't exist, the picture doesn't include you. I think those statements are in agreement.
I think that the picture from within the framework of existence does not include it.
I don't think there is another framework. I think existence constitutes the totality of everything. It sounds like you're saying that there is a type of existence that isn't existence that's beyond what is.
Okay, let me try and rephrase the question. Do you think that the laws of logic apply to existence?
Yes, yeah.
Do you think that the second law of logic applies to existence? That is to say, existence does not equal not existence.
Yes.
Yes? Then in saying that, you have acknowledged the non-existence of non-existence.
As a conceptual construct, I acknowledge that we can conceive of the negation of everything, right? And I'm saying that I think that the negation of everything couldn't be true at the same time as everything.
But it's not true. It's false. That's what I'm saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying, is that being false means not being at all.
Yes, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, but there's no other type of being. That's why, I don't know.
No, but it is regardless of the fact of whether or not exists. It exists. It does have structure definitionally. This structure is the negation of the structure which does exist, and you cannot disregard the fact that it has structure. It definitely has a structure, regardless of whether or not it exists.
But what you're saying is that the structure is the negation of the structure that does exist, and negation is an operation, right? Negation is subjective. Negation is not something that exists objectively. The structure of the world exists subjectively, and it only becomes negated when there is a mind to negate.
I completely agree with everything except the last statement. I think that the laws of logic themselves necessitate a negative structure for it to exist relative to, right? So the negative structure must not exist for the positive structure to exist. It's in the definition of the structure.
I understand what you mean there, but the thing is that I account for that fact differently. I don't say that it must be a negative structure. For me, it is. There is the actual data and the theoretical data. The theoretical data is not negative structure, it's possible structure.
It is the inversion of the structure which exists.
No, it is there. That's what I'm saying, though. Theoretical data isn't that. The thing that I think exists relative to the actual data isn't non-data or non-actuality. For me, what exists relative to actuality is theoretical data, right? So that's not a negation.
No, but we at the very least we both agree that not existence, at least at a conceptual level, does have some kind of structure.
On a mental plane, yeah, definitely.
And so by extension of that, this structure has properties which can also potentially have effects, right?
I mean, so it would have properties that we would associate with it in the sense that we associate things mentally, but I'm not sure what do you mean by have an effect on it? Because I only concede that it exists on a mental plane, and things that exist on a mental plane do not technically affect anything.
No, but I also completely agree that it doesn't objectively exist.
So if it only exists on a mental plane, why do you reject the?
No, but I don't think it's a mental plane, because I think that our mental plane that we are existing within, that we are experiencing, I should say, is supported by existence, and I believe that this is distinct from existence. It is, by definition, not existence. It is not a part of existence.
No, I don't agree with that. I mean, the mental plane is absolutely part of existence.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said it's not a part of the mental plane. I think that the mental plane is a part of existence, and since this is not existence, it cannot be the mental plane. Maybe the mental plane can interact with it, but on a fundamental level, this anti-structure cannot be a part of the structure that it actually objectively exists.
Yeah, I understand that, but for me, like the anti-structure is just an imaginary thing. It's not something that has any reality on any plane except a mental one.
No, but we both already agreed that it does not objectively exist.
No, I know, but I'm saying it doesn't exist beyond the mental plane.
No, but you're contradicting yourself. You're like, on one hand, you say it doesn't objectively exist. It exists within the minds that objectively exist, and so at least indirectly, you're saying it doesn't objectively exist, but it objectively exists.
No, I'm saying it objectively exists as a mental construct, but that there is no part of the world which is non-existence. There is no, and there's no
I
part
reject that it objectively exists.
And there's no non-world where non-existent things exist either.
No, they don't exist. There is a non-existence where non-things don't exist.
No, but I'm saying there isn't such a thing. That's what it means to be non-existence. Like, I agree with you up to the point where you say that.
No, but you are agreeing with me, but you're like, you agree with me on every point and then reject the conclusion. I don't understand.
The thing is that I'm saying that like everything that you say is true, except the fact that you say that it doesn't exist. Such a place. Yeah, there is no such place.
Yeah, such a place does not exist. 100% agree.
There's no non-existent corollary of place where such things are.
But to say they are is to say they exist, which I reject.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying apart from mentality, these things are not.
I don't think that they are. I don't think it makes sense for non-structure to exist in the mental plane, because I think that our minds objectively exist, and that would mean that indirectly it objectively exists, which I reject. It cannot exist.
No, but it's not. It's an imaginary existence. That's what it is. Like within your neurological.
What do you mean by imaginary?
I mean something
within minds. I don't think it exists within minds. I think that we're not even capable of. We aren't even capable of interacting with it with our minds.
I'm saying that the mind is capable of playing dumb to certain rules it's bound by, so it can conceive of things that aren't possible in reality because
but it's not a thing.
It's not. It's still a thing in the mind.
No, we can't even access Antilogic for it. That's the thing that, like, the best I've been able to do.
Listen, let's not deal with the boundary case. Let's just deal with something simpler. You can conceive of, imagine things that literally are not possible in reality because you're ignorant to what makes them impossible. Do you agree so far?
Can you re-say that?
You can imagine things that aren't literally possible in reality because you're ignorant as to the reason that would make them impossible.
I don't acknowledge that as a legitimate argument, no.
So you don't think that it's possible to imagine something and then later discover that what you imagined wasn't realistic given the laws that govern the field in which your imagination took place?
I think that you can conceive of things which are not, I think that you can conceive of non-things which are not consistent with objective reality. That is what I believe.
Yes, I mean,
but you cannot interact with it, right?
With that, but that doesn't...
So one of the things I've noticed in playing with the idea of Antilogic for many months is that I can't even interact with it, right? Like, the very best I can do is try to translate it into logic, which does exist, and then run through all of the possible permutations, because I can't even interact. I can't even directly interact with anti-logic. It seems to be an impossibility, at least for a human mind.
Okay.
I've yet to find a way to do it. And so I don't think that it can exist within minds. I think it is impossible because minds exist.
I don't think it exists at all. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't think. No, but
No,
and then
that's also what I'm saying.
Yes. No, look, and then you say yes, but you have some kind of holdover existence, and I have no idea what that is.
No, but okay. So here's the difference, right? So we both agree that this non-existence, whatever it is, this non-thing, right, does have some kind of structure in that it is the inversion of existence. Where we disagree is you say this non-structure can exist within minds, and I say that is not possible because it doesn't exist and minds do exist.
No, so what I'm saying is you can conceive of something approximately of that nature with a mind. Like, that's what I'm saying is that even if it is not possible to conceive of coherently, by ignoring all of the relevant lines, you can in fact conceive of something similar that you imagine to be possible, even though it is not.
I think you can take the underlying principles and translate them into logic, and using that you can interact with something which is in some ways similar, but you can never directly interact with anti-logic or non-things or non-existence. It's an impossibility.
What makes anti-logic necessary for a complete conceptualization of the world, then?
Because I think that existence is bound by logic. I think that logic is bound by logic. Yes, and I take those to be like gospel truths.
No, but so do I. But I interpret what it means for logic to be bound by logic, that there is actual data and theoretical data. You seem to take it to mean that there is existence and non-existence.
Yes. So I think that via law 2 of the laws of logic, if you are to say that existence is bound by the laws of logic, that means that it must exist relative to non-existence not existing. And you're saying this is just some kind of mental fabrication, but I don't believe a mind is even capable of supporting such a thing because minds exist.
No, but that's the thing, though, is that what we're doing is we're taking everything that exists and we're applying a very common operation that we do, which is negation. There's nothing outrageous about attempting to negate.
No, but you reject the conclusion of negation, which is falsehood. Like, yeah. you consider negation almost to be an illegal operation because it leads to something which...
No. All I consider negation to be is merely an operation. It says nothing about the way things are. What it says something about is the way that we understand it. An operation is a transmutation on our understanding. That's what operation is. Right? Operation says absolutely nothing about reality. Reality doesn't do operations. Minds do operations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so an operation is you take something you think you understand and you transform it into something else you think you understand. That's what an operation is.
But we are incapable of doing such a thing.
No, but
we are physically incapable.
I disagree. We can observe operations occurring.
If you unless you acknowledge the non-existence of falsehood as legitimate, you are incapable of acknowledging negation as a legitimate operation.
I already did acknowledge the non-existence of falsehood as legitimate. I did say that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that definitionally exists. Okay.
You think non-existence is a species of existence?
No, I don't. I think non-existence is the opposite of existence.
Which is not anything, though.
Yes, it is a non-thing, and as such, it cannot be supported by minds. It is not a mental fabrication because our minds are not even capable of supporting such a structure.
That doesn't make
it is a non-structure.
No, I don't understand how you get to the idea that it can't be supported by our minds.
Okay. Let me give you another example.
No. Listen. I think even though falsehoods do not exist in objective reality, our minds can conjecture many forms of falsehood, many forms. And I'm just gonna briefly BRB. So give me like 30 seconds to a minute.
Okay.
What are you guys talking about?
Antilogic.
You know things to be true, like epistemology or something? Or like
It's related, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you're like a moral subjectivist or whatever, like, or even if you can't really know anything to be true.
That's not exactly what this is about, but sure. Yeah, I agree.
Not about morality.
Oh, okay.
It's pure metaphysics.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that in the same sense that it's like if I try to negate the idea of a thing, I should probably wait until Vincent gets back to this actually.
Bridge, was it you I was talking to like yesterday or the other day about like laws and that kind of stuff? Or was it someone else?
Probably something like that, yeah.
Okay. Have you come up with an answer for it?
It's the question.
Essentially, that laws make no sense under a moral subjective worldview.
No.
Okay, then you
not
must
true.
talk to someone else then, because it was
Oh, okay.
I'll argue about that briefly in a different chat. But there are many conceptions under which it makes sense under moral subjectivism.
No, not really. I mean, you can
Yeah,
have
there is.
a presupposition of
if you think
certain
that, you just don't know.
premises, but
You just don't know enough about metaethical theories if you think that's true.
I'm not trying to say that, no one should be allowed to talk, but if there's like an ongoing thing in this chat,
Instigate of
Julius,
Kate,
J. Robin.
that's why I offered
Do
to
you
go.
like-
I offered to go to a different chat immediately.
Oh yeah, I heard. J. Robin. you wanna
Anyway,
do
I'm
it.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I can go to a
I
different
have another
chat.
way of trying to describe this, right? So take, for example, this idea of negation, right? I think that we are incapable of interacting with the negation of something. So let's say I want to take a thing and a non-thing, right? So in my mind, I perform some kind of operation which is supposed to represent the negation of a thing, which should be a non-thing, and what I get as a result, because my mind itself exists, is another thing which I'm labeling a non-thing.
No,
Like,
wait, but
as a being which exists,
No.
I cannot interact
No,
with
no.
things that do not exist.
You're taking negation to be a conceptual process when it isn't. Sorry, you're not taking negation to be an ontological process when it's a conceptual one. Like what we
No,
mean.
I think that it is built. It's baked into the
No,
fabric of existence. Logic.
No, when we negate something, we do not say that it doesn't exist. We say that it is the opposite of what it is, not including the property of existence.
Yes, which is fine for things which negate to other things, but for things which negate to non-things, such as a thing itself or existence or truth, what we receive as a result is another thing, a version of existence which we have just labeled differently, or a something which has this structure that we're calling false, but behaves basically the same as truth. We're just like we try and like
The same.
smudge the lines, but we can't actually interact with the negation of any of these principles.
In what way does it behave the same as truth?
Hmm?
In what way does falsehood behave the same as truth?
It exists within our minds, and our minds exist. Therefore, it exists. And I believe falsehood cannot exist in any sense, even within minds.
It's not behaving the same as truth.
In the sense of how it exists, yes,
No.
it is.
No, it isn't. It has qualitative.
Falsehood within a human mind exists in the same way that truth exists within a human mind.
Qualitative differences between truth in the human mind and falsehood in the human mind. They're not the same. Just because they exist in the same way does not mean that they are equivalent. They're not. Like, the qualities that distinguish them are important.
Yeah, but we can't interact with falsehood.
Yes, which is
what we come up with is which is a truth that we have labeled differently.
No, but this is what I'm saying is that, like, what you're saying when you say what we come up with is a truth that we've labeled differently. The truth of it is that that thing isn't. That's the truth of it. It is
Yes,
not
and that's
real.
exactly what I'm saying. It doesn't exist. It can't exist, even within minds.
It's not labeled differently. We're saying what is true about it is that it isn't. That's the only true thing about it, is that it is not.
No, but the fact that the concept what we call falsehoods, which is really the idea of falsehoods, because we can't actually interact with falsehoods, is not falsehood in the same sense that the idea of is a thing. Like you can't actually, as a mind which does exist, you cannot engage with or interact with or like do
That's
anything with
false.
things that don't exist.
That is false. As long as you ignore what makes it impossible, you absolutely can. We have many examples of this.
Okay, can you give me an example of nothing without using the idea of nothing, or can you give me the example of a non-thing without using
Not of
a
nothing.
thing?
Not of nothing or a non-thing, but of something that only exists in the mind, which is what we understand a falsehood to be. You can have a dream that isn't constrained by linear logic, but nonetheless is something that exists in reality.
No, but I don't think that falsehoods can exist even within minds.
But that's the thing, though, is that dreams can't exist outside minds. Falsehoods can't exist outside minds. I'm drawing an analogy between the two to suggest that that brains can in fact sustain conjecture that is not substantiated in reality. That's what I'm proving with dreams.
No, but by rejecting like falsehood or non-existence entirely, you can no longer like hold to the laws of logic because they are dependent on negation.
Insofar as I'm saying it's not real, it doesn't actually exist, and you're saying, well, if it doesn't actually exist, it has a corollary existence in non-existence, and I'm
No,
saying
it doesn't exist.
exactly, but you think that's a corollary, you think that's a species of existence from
No,
the way
I don't. That is the exact opposite of what I believe.
from the way you talk about it, that's the only thing I can sum up.
From the way I talk about it is like not by choice, as a mind which exists as a thing which can only interact with things. When I try to describe a non-thing, I can only do so using things which completely fails to capture the entire thing I'm trying to describe.
Yeah. If you don't think what I said, then it sounds like we don't disagree. If you accept that there's no corollary species.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I've been saying the whole time. I've been saying we actually completely agree, but you reject that the anti-logic is even worth examining, even though it exhibits these complex behaviors which logic itself does not exhibit.
I never said it wasn't worth examining. I said I don't see the value in examining it. Other people can examine it. I'm not saying it's not worth looking into. I'm saying I don't know what I would get from it.
You would get a mechanism through which you can explain things like time.
I don't feel the need to furnish a mechanism beyond what I can already describe verbally.
No, but I think if you are trying to develop a theory of everything, being able to explain concepts such as time is pretty valuable. How can you say that it's not valuable?
So for me, maybe this is like something that I haven't made clear, but I'm not really like that trying to develop the theory of everything. That is what I was doing with DM theory, but I'm not really on that train anymore, man. Like, I don't really care. I have enough of everything to describe a little bit of everything. That's all I need. Is I have encapsulated enough of the fractal order of reality to analyze anything by comparing it to what I've got, right? Beyond that, I'm not too concerned with accounting for every single phenomenon. That sounds very complicated and time-consuming.
Okay, well, the entire argument I have been presenting is that without acknowledging the non-existence of non-things, DM theory is incomplete.
But DM theory doesn't attempt to explain every single phenomenon. What it attempts to do is explain the basis of every phenomenon.
But it doesn't explain the basis of it. It only explains the basis of things which exist.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine.
You already acknowledged that there is structure which doesn't exist, and without antilogic, you cannot explain it.
That's good enough for me.
Okay, so perhaps you do not use it, but I believe that in order for DM theory to be complete, it must acknowledge the non-existence of antilogic.
Well, for me, I think it implicitly acknowledges the non-existence of any logic when it says that the logic is all that exists, the data logic is all that exists. In saying that, I don't think I need an explicit statement about it denouncing the existence of anti-logic. It doesn't need that.
No, but that's the thing, is that if you're going to be discussing data logic, that is the structure of structure which applies to both existence and non-existence. Like
me, Chris, is I'm rewriting DM theory, right? So when I touch on anti-logic, what do you want me to say about it? You want me to say, so like I've looked into it and it doesn't exist? Like that's good enough for you for me to acknowledge that it doesn't exist? I doubt it, right? You want some other kind of acknowledgement, which I don't understand.
Yeah, it's no, it doesn't even have conceptual form because it cannot be supported by a mind because minds exist.
Say in DM Theory Reloaded, right? Because I am obviously rewriting the paper, right? You want me to say, like my colleague Nano, right, Chris, has extended this idea, but he assures me his extension does not exist.
No, but that's the thing, right? Is that like sure, if non-existence behaved, for lack of a better term, exactly the same as existence, I think it would be sufficient to just say doesn't exist, whatever, right? But when you actually try to apply the negation of the laws of logic, that you don't just get true instead of false or false instead of true, right? You get completely different, much more complex behavior.
You're aware that I am aware of what you think is attached to that, right? But on the face of it, in a summary form, it doesn't exist. How else would you have me say it? Right? Like that's what I'm wondering is, if I am to mention what this extension you've made to our idea in the rewrite, right? What do I say about it? That's the thing I'm not getting. What do you want me to say? Because I don't even know what it means to say it doesn't. I feel like that is denouncing it to say that it doesn't exist.
I think that it is showing that you have completely applied logic to all things, including logic itself and existence. It is the natural conclusion of the application of logic to all things.
Yeah, but saying that it doesn't exist, right? That's not enough, is it? What would be enough?
What do you mean?
So, me saying I've looked into Antilogic and my conclusion is it doesn't exist, right? That wouldn't be enough. That wouldn't satisfy you. What would satisfy you?
I don't know, just like I don't even particularly care if it's written into like DM theory or not. The main thing that bugs me is that you refuse to engage with it in any way.
No, but I'm
well,
not.
No, that's not true. That's not true, actually. I apologize. That was a straw man.
But this is the thing that I'm wondering about is, if I were to try to do what you would call engaging with it, right, which is to acknowledge its non-existence, right, then I would be saying, that's what I'm not trying to, I'm just saying, like, if I were to do what you've asked me to do, I think, which is acknowledge that it doesn't exist, right? That it doesn't exist, what, as a complement to what does? Is that what you mean?
Yes, it is the relative opposite. All things are relative, including logic, including existence. The relative opposite of logic is anti-logic. The relative opposite of existence is non-existence. All things are relative. Existence isn't just magic bubble that doesn't exist relative to anything else.
Yeah, well, how do you feel if I call that imaginary? And what does that make you think if I say that?
I think that is closer, but it's still misleading because it makes it sound like it exists within minds, which is an impossibility. It cannot exist within minds unless the mind itself does not exist.
I don't agree with that proposition that it cannot exist within minds. I think that minds...
It cannot exist, period. Not even within minds.
No, but it's an approximation of it. It isn't it. The
No,
thing...
that's what I mean. Whenever we try to interact with it, we can translate it into an approximation, and you can run through like several different versions of like what if this actually was true or false, or like you can play with it by translating it into logic, which we can engage with, but you can't directly engage with it.
Yes, exactly. It's only the approximation that can exist in the mind. The other thing can't exist at all. But we can imagine something which approximates what you mean by ignoring the rules that are being violated by the approximation.
No, but no rules are being violated. It is the conclusion of accurately applying the rules. Like to not acknowledge the non-existence of like antilogic or non-things or like any of these or falsehoods, or like to not acknowledge that those things don't exist is to not correctly apply the second law of logic to all things.
Can someone else help me understand what he means by acknowledging its non-existence, right? Because for me, it seems like there's some kind of vague equivocation going on. Because when I suggest that I report in the theory that I have investigated and I say it does not exist, that is literally acknowledging the non-existence of it. What about that isn't good enough? What about that fails to satisfy the criteria, which is to say that you think that it doesn't really exist, but as a complementary conceptual counterpart, that it is something?
Because at least in the way you have been conveying it previously, it comes across almost as if because it doesn't exist, it's not even worth attempting to examine it.
No, but
That's how it comes across, at least to me. And I think that just as much value can be extracted from examining antilogic as examining logic.
But I literally have examined antilogic by talking to you about it. That is literally what it constitutes to discuss it with you, right? And like, I don't think that what I've got out of it is nothing. I just think I come to agree with the summary conclusion, which it seems like it doesn't quite actually summarize what you mean, because when I say, right, I have concluded it doesn't exist, you say, well, you must be missing something then. But how? That's what you said.
I'm not sure I follow that. What do you say?
Okay, so when I say I have looked into it by talking to you about it, and I have concluded it doesn't exist, and it's only conceptual, right? Then I don't understand how you disagree with that, because I feel like that's exactly what you've said.
No, but I think in just stopping with the summary of it doesn't exist and stopping there, you are doing it an injustice, because the behavior of anti-logic is just as complex, if not more complex, than the behavior of logic.
Okay, and that may be true, but the thing is that I don't think that studying the behavior of anti-logic is particularly relevant to most people's lives. Most people's lives are better understood by studying logic, not anti-logic.
Yeah, but if you are trying to discuss the nature of existence, I think you need to be spending like just as much time describing the nature of non-existence, or you're only looking at half the picture. You're only looking at the half that exists.
What if I'm happy to only look at the half that exists, though? What if that's the goal of what I'm doing?
If you are willing to acknowledge that you're only looking at half the picture, then I don't have a problem.
So yeah,
but generally in the past you have rejected the idea that it's only half the picture.
If I instead of characterizing it as a theory of everything, I characterize it as a theory of everything that exists, you're comfortable with that?
What did you say?
Instead of a theory of everything that exists. You're comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Sure.
well then, I'm fine changing it to a theory of everything that exists, bro.
But then you cannot claim that it explains the nature of existence itself, because the nature of existence is fundamentally tied to the nature of non-existence.
I mean,
They're relative opposites.
I can claim that if I think it is, but you're saying...
Okay, you cannot accurately claim that, in my opinion.
So yeah, you're saying you think it's unjustified. That's fair enough. You can think it's unjustified. I would be interested though, because I mean, when these ideas are published, I would love to see a counter article along the lines that we've discussed, right? Saying that, well, it can't be a theory of everything that exists, or a theory, because I mean, that is just shorthand for a theory, that's longhand for a theory of everything, right? If it doesn't account for what you would say doesn't exist, right? I'd love to, because I mean, obviously, I intend to publish the rewrite. I'd love to see an article published by you that says otherwise, because that would be really awesome. Because it's not that this idea doesn't have merit. It doesn't agree with me. I don't know what else to say about it. Like, my intuitions dictate that I don't investigate this. It seems like something that isn't worth investigating, in the sense that I think Antilogic, as curious as it might be from an abstract intellectual point of view, doesn't directly pertain to anything in my life.
I think that it pertains to everything in your life, bro. Like but if you only look at the half the picture, you can't see it, right?
Yeah.
The behaviors, the behaviors of logic are a direct result of the behaviors of antilogic and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, look,
you can say logic is, but you can't say why logic is without acknowledging antilogic.
No, but that's the thing, though, is I think I can. You
can assume it. You can't justify it.
I mean, you think it's just an assumption. I think some assumptions are necessarily true.
Yes, but antilogic explain it absolutely is necessarily true, and antilogic explains why.
I don't feel the need to explain why. I rely on the fact that
what kind of theory of everything doesn't need to explain why?
I rely on the fact that all the information is available to my reader. All I need to explain is how to put it together. I don't need to explain it.
But all the information is not available. We have zero access to antilogic. We have indirect access through the negation of logic, which in itself, in the form that we have it, exists as an operation within minds that exists, isn't even antilogic. It's like a analog. We don't have access to it.
That's what I'm saying is, I don't find something that we have no way of accessing that doesn't exist in what I conceptualize the world to be worth studying in a theory of everything. My theory of everything doesn't include non-existence. I don't think that's worth mapping.
I think that investigating non-existence can teach you a lot of things about existence.
I agree with that, but I don't think it's worth mapping. You can map it, and you can farm those fucking little gold nuggets, but for me, it's so hit and miss that I don't think it's worthwhile trying.
I don't know. I think that when some of the topics, such as time, are at least appear to be fundamentally tied to logic and existence, and by extension the opposite of it, and when all of logic when all of logic by its nature through law 1 A equals A must definitionally be static, yet somehow through our experience things appear to change. How can such a thing occur? I think antilogic is a very, very useful tool to explain such a mechanism, because mechanistically it is anti-logical. Time is not logical.
Look, mechanistically, you might need antilogic to explain that. I feel like I can explain the same thing in natural language without antilogic. If I can explain the same thing to my satisfaction and the satisfaction of others, why do I need antilogic?
Because you can't explain it satisfactorily.
No. How do you, you're not judging, I'm saying if I can explain it enough so that I understand how to work with it, and other people understand how to work with it, and how to interact with it, how to feel about it, right? Then I don't understand what's insufficient about that.
that it leads to like if you frame it as a complete explanation, you are doing people a disservice because they may not even attempt to extract value from the other half of the picture. They'll only see half the picture unless it is described.
And in this sense, maybe our lives can be parallel experiments, because in your mind, right, I only see part of the picture, and in my mind, you're not seeing anything more. So if you're right, and I'm missing half of the picture, how is that going to become obvious in my life, and it won't manifest in yours in the same way? What would I observe in my life that would tell me that I don't understand all of reality because I only have half of the picture, whereas you do, right?
Because maybe we should start by actually explaining some of these concepts. So how do you describe the fact that things appear to change even though the law of identity directly states that the identity is set in stone, it is unchanging?
You have a limited perspective. Bound by space-time as you are, you see things in the moment, not as they are.
No, but how? There's only one moment. How can you see a sub-moment? There is just the identity.
There's not only one moment. I don't even believe in the present. The present doesn't exist. The present is an illusion. Everything exists, and we mistakenly conceive of the present as the only thing.
So change is an impossibility.
Change is an illusion. Yeah.
So if I have a ball at point let's say I have an axiom, right? Axiom A at point in time 1, and then I have axiom A at point in time 2. Those are not the same thing, right?
I'm not understanding the analogy, sorry.
Okay, so anything that appears to have changed is actually two completely separate things, right? Because change is impossible.
No, that's not what I said. I said change is an illusion.
Well, I think that using only logic, change is an impossibility.
Any change born in the present is the product of a seed that was planted in the past. It's not real change. It's the development of something which is static in a frame.
How can something static develop?
It's in a frame of reference that only pays attention to one piece at a time. If you were to watch it all, you would see the whole development as a picture that wouldn't require you to go through the steps of the present moment.
No, but that's the thing. That on a fundamental level, like a top-down, big picture everything, I agree that existence itself is static, but in terms of trying to explain why things appear to change, once you bring antilogic into the picture, you actually can explain that rather than just saying, it's just an illusion.
You feel like I'm not explaining it when I say it's just an illusion, but I feel like...
Okay, what is the mechanism for that illusion to occur?
The fact that subjectivity limits you to the present moment.
But there is only one moment.
No, there isn't. All moments...
Time doesn't exist. There's one moment. That's what you just said earlier.
All moments exist. That's what time, not being linear, means. Time, as a dimension of physics, exists. All of the moments in space-time exist. The present moment is an illusion.
Yes, and so therefore change is an impossibility.
Yeah, but
so when I look at my phone and I see some text on the screen, and I look at my phone in the next moment and see something else, those are completely separate objects. They are not the same thing. There is no transfer of state. The state is completely unchanging. They are just completely distinct, separate objects.
True. All of the facts of the previous moment led to that next moment.
It can't have led to anything because there is no change.
No, but that's exactly it. Because there's no change, it always led. Point to point to point, it eternally is that way, right?
Okay, so let me come with an example. Let's take a mathematical function, right? If I have a function x and the result of that and the definition of that function is x equals x. If I plug in 1, I'm always going to receive 1. That I cannot get a continuous plot of if I said, for example, the function is x equals x plus 1, right? Then there would, even though the whole function exists at once, there's not individual discrete points. It is a continuous function unless x has some kind of structure other than x equals x. It will just be a single point.
Yeah, I'm not understanding. Sorry, you're taking this process philosophy view of reality that I just completely disagree with.
No, but I'm trying to. I don't think it's a process either. I'm just trying to describe it.
Okay, so for me, the linearity of time is an illusion based on perspective. I think that explanation does it. And honestly, you are one of the few people who hasn't accepted that explanation. So for me, I'm thinking that your objection is more of an anomaly than my explanation.
Okay, but how many of the people that you have explained it to have even attempted to examine antilogic?
None of them. But what makes you think that they would think it would be useful? That's the thing I don't get, right? Is you can't expect someone to investigate something.
In terms of everyday life, right? I'm gonna go to work and do shit, completely useless. In terms of trying to explain the nature of existence and concepts like time, I think it is invaluable.
I know you think that, but what makes you think they would, right? Even in that framing, what makes you think they would, from the beginning, think that anti-logic would be helpful in that manner?
Because it allows you to describe a mechanism rather than just taking it as an assumption.
So what if you're not interested in describing the mechanism for every single phenomena in existence? What if instead you're interested in studying the general fractal form of phenomena? What about that?
Then it seems like you're not really actually interested in a complete theory of everything.
That's not true. I just take complete to mean something different. I take complete to mean a fractal formula. You take complete to mean a complete taxonomy, a comprehensive taxonomy.
No, but you don't have a formula because your formula is x equals x, which leads to just the same value that you input.
I don't think there is another value. You may think so, and that's the taxonomic idea, right?
No, but you're as soon as you've disregarded time as an illusion, it's almost like you've stopped trying to examine it. You're like, it's an illusion. I don't need to look at it anymore. It's just static, bro.
Oh, I look at it every day because I live within the illusion.
Right.
I'm just gonna
but you have no understanding. So it is a fundamental part of your existence.
Wait, I'm gonna BRB.
Okay.
Alright, I'm back.
Alright. What were we saying?
I don't know. What do you think's at the root of our disagreement? What would you say?
I think that for me, it just seems like you are disregarding a fundamental part of like understanding existence. A fundamental part required to understand existence, and you don't have a problem with that.
No, I mean, I'm not disregarding it. I'm just electing not to actively investigate it. Like,
Yeah, but like so like we both agree that like you even said earlier that like you exist within time. It is an extremely fundamental part of your life,
yeah,
and you cannot give any description for how such a thing could work, and like you don't
I
care.
don't need to understand everything. I just need
No,
to.
but you can't even give a basic description of how it functions.
I don't need
Like
to.
even a like the most simple like primitive description possible. It is not possible using exclusively logic.
It's not relevant to my goals. All I need to understand about it is what matters relative to my goals. Force is my band.
God damn it! Fuck hands. Whatever. I'm just gonna say, yeah. I'm not choosing to use terminology that implies non-things are things. The nature of language and of being a human, which does exist, forces me to describe it as if it was a thing. Even the closest I could otherwise get is to just say nothing.
That's what non-existence means. It means there is no it. There is no it. There's nothing you're describing. There's no they. There's no it. There's nothing.
Yes, exactly. Thinghood is fundamentally built into all of our language.
Yes, but that means if
Like
you're saying
using language, it is impossible to accurately describe antilogic.
one thing that doesn't have properties.
He's appealing to the fact that that analysis bridge is just a quirk of language, right?
Like it is not possible in the same sense that I cannot describe to you silence using language. Like I can give you a like dictionary definition, but in doing so, I have violated the very principle it is supposed to represent. Same with nothing. If I try to describe nothing to you, I can only do so by providing you with an idea, which is in itself a thing.
Yeah, but that's
No, but like ideas can only ever refer to like they're either only ideas or they refer to things.
yeah.
That's it.
So like, I have this idea of what could be the case, right? And then what you think is the case is that idea, absence your idea, right? Actualized in reality.
What was that?
I said, what you mean when you say you have this idea about what could be the case is that absent your idea, the thing that you have as an idea is actualized in reality. Absent your idea.
If you remove the picture, then you get an accurate description of what is the case.
No, I'm just gonna say something I came up with a while ago. Shameless self-plug. Okay, to say nothing is to not speak, and to think nothing is to not think. That's it.
Shameless plug. Look, I
think it's true though.
No,
Like-
look, height. It's not that he can't lay claim to consistency, right? He's a very clever guy. He is being consistent. I just don't think he's making any meaningful kind of sense. Like, for me, he's not talking about anything. And for him, I'm like disregarding part of the world that he thinks is relevant, but
Well, it's not part of the. This is the problem, right? Like you can't even discuss the topic without misrepresenting it.
as me being inaccurate to approximate what is true.
Yeah. I've been doing the same thing the whole time.
Yeah, so you think I'm like missing something? I don't know how to put it. Part of the
Some
world.
non-thing. You have to like negate every word that you use, which is still inaccurate, but a little bit less inaccurate.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Did you fry my brain? It's like taking too many drugs talking to you sometimes.
No, but I think that like once you examine the way that anti-logic behaves by translating it to logic, and then trying to evaluate all of the different possibilities, even though all of them would need to be evaluated in parallel. If you take all of the different possibilities of the possible states, right? So like the issue you run into is that like in order to evaluate anti-logic, you would need to evaluate it without assuming the law of excluded middle. But due to the way our brains function, we always have a state which is either like positive or negative. Like we can't evaluate anti-logic with our brains.
I'm wondering, like, what if I say to you, that is a curious, anomalous part of the world that merits investigation, but I don't think it exists. Does that do it?
I guess, I don't know. I feel like
Because I feel like I'm like hitting every point there, right? I'm like, it
Yeah.
does merit investigation. It is curious, but it doesn't exist, right?
yes, and that is accurate.
I feel, yeah, that seems, but I feel like that is exactly how I feel. Like, I was thinking yesterday when I was thinking about this talk today, I was like, last time I took acid, I didn't think about this. I should think about this next time I take acid. So it's not like I'm like closed off to the idea that you're saying something that I could understand. It's just that, like, as far as I understand currently, it's curious. I should look into it at some point, but it doesn't exist.
Yes, but just and this is I think this is the bit that that is not being captured, and the reason why it keeps bugging me is that through like attempting to understand anti-logic, it can give you insight into the nature of existence that is otherwise impossible to access.
I'd probably grant that just on the face of it, just based on conversations we've had about it. Yeah, I'd probably grant that.
Okay. And I think the other thing that no, actually that's not what I originally wanted to say. The original thing I wanted to say is that the bit that I was taking issue with is that I think you also need to acknowledge that the non-existence of non-things has a direct impact on the existence of things because they are relative opposites.
In terms of conceptualization, I agree.
But it cannot be conceptualized.
Okay, in terms of
It is not conceptual. It is not a conceptual impact. It is a direct impact.
In the process of conceptualization, it makes itself manifest.
I'm not sure what you mean.
So
I kind of understand.
So like we approximate the opposite of existence when we negate things, right? Like
Yeah.
when we speak of non-existence, especially when trying to approximate what this thing that we can't imagine is.
Yeah. Also, to answer Hyatt's question, he asked if you could elucidate the nature of antilogic in terms of datalogic. Would it further deepen DM theory? I think yes, absolutely, it would.
Yeah, I think that's the basis of the argument.
Yeah. I think that by not giving at least like obviously 50-50 is unnecessary because we exhibit we exist within existence, we interact with existence. We can't even directly interact with anti-logic, right? Like to 50-50 split it would just be a waste of people's time. But like unless you actually include the key important points about anti-logic, it is doing a disservice to DM theory. Because it's incomplete. I actually have been trying to make a theory of every non-thing. I've also been trying to model it, but every like what I've been encountering with the programs that I've written is that the best I can do, at least with the classical computer, is try to translate it to logic because that's the only thing that a computer can evaluate. And then and then like run through every possible permutation of the axioms, like being true or false, because I can't evaluate them being true or false at the same time. And the conclusion that I've been moving towards is that the only way I'm actually going to even have a slight chance of being able to model this is to model it on a quantum computer, where I actually do have a true state collapse. So I guess, would you say that we agree that it at least can be valuable to understanding existence?
Yeah, definitely we agree it can be.
And it could be worthwhile at least elaborating in some sense when trying to describe the nature of existence to also elaborate on the nature of non-existence.
Yes, but I feel like you are much more keen on the nature of non-existence than I am.
That's because I like systems that do stuff, like move, yes, the static systems are interesting, but the systems that have like a mechanistic nature are much more interesting to me.
Sure, yeah. Like, yeah, I mean, I agree with that, yes.
Does that make this number 4?
Number 4? What do you mean?
Number 4 addition of controversial material into the body of DM theory.
Yeah, probably.
Hell yeah! I swear it takes longer each and every time.
Does I mean, look, what I will say is I am resolved to mention it in the rewrite. But
Okay.
how much time I give to it depends on what I find when I look into it when I do
I
take
think
it.
that's completely justified. That is how it should be. You shouldn't just take my word for it. You should try to understand it for yourself before you try and like describe it.
Sure, but I'm totally open to suggesting that, there's another part to look into. I just don't.
It just that part doesn't exist.
Yeah, for me, I just don't have any experiences of it, so it doesn't even like there's anything to it,
Well, I haven't been able to experience it either, despite much trying.
Dude, our imagination, like language is the product of our imagination.
No, I don't accept that. Language is the product of your attempt to represent the world.
Dude, our imagination is us distinguishing between the past, future, and present.
No,
And
I don't accept that. Imagination is a specific part of your cognition.
Not true.
That is true. Like scientifically, imagination is a specific part of your cognition.
What does it do?
It's creative. For the most part, have you ever seen something randomly change?
I mean, I know that there's such a thing as genetic mutation.
That's not random, though.
How is that not random?
Just because you can't calculate how it's occurring doesn't mean that it's random, dude.
Okay, but we also know that the laws of physics aren't constant. Like, we know that occasionally the speed of light changes. Don't. Yeah.
No, we have miscalculated it. That's what you're talking about.
But the way my theory would be set would be something along the lines of there's like a small change in the direction. All right, so like we'd have to start with like the fundamentals. There's something and it's moving, and like moving as in the sense that it's changing. Like we recognize that there's change in our perception, and so we would have to find a way to represent that mathematically.